Okay, so the other day I talked about and different variables to progress your training, exercise. Right. So if you have one exercise, how do you change that exercise? How do you progress in that exercise? How do you stimulate the body to adapt to that exercise when it isn't just weights, reps, and speed, right? Which is the variables that most people kind of mess with, right? They kind of change those things. So you either increase or decrease the weight, you either increase or decrease the reps or the amount of time that you're doing the exercise for, or you increase or decrease the speed at which you're doing that exercise. And yesterday I talked about height of an exercise, right? So changing your lunge and changing different exercises to go to a different height of that exercise can change the stimulus or the demand of the exercise. So that's something that you can use to integrate into your training to make a little bit more difficult or a little bit easier, depending on what you need. And if you can see me right now, I am outside, right? So this is another variable that we don't often think about in terms of what we can use to change things up. So if you look right now, let's pretend you run on a treadmill, right? Let's pretend you run on a treadmill for your cardio. Some of you guys know that if you took it outside, that'd be a very different experience, right? So running that same mile on a treadmill and running that same mile outside, very different experiences. Or running on a track, very different experience than running on a treadmill or running indoors. And if you look down on the ground, you have grass. Also, very different variable, right? It's a very different variable. So running on grass, people go to the beach and they run on the sand. They play sand volleyball. They jump on that sand. It's very different than jumping on a basketball court or a volleyball court. So that is another thing that you can use to change your program. So instead of taking your cardio and saying, oh yeah, I run 30 minutes on the treadmill, try to run 30 minutes outside. See how different that is for you. So what I'm talking about right now in this variable is environment, right? So again, I live in Las Vegas and the environment outside is very different than if I went into a gym right now. So doing that same exact workout outside for me would be a very different experience than if I did it in a 70-degree air-conditioned facility. So right now it's, I don't know, like 102 or something like that. So this workout, this exercise. So let's say I went inside and I did squats and push-ups and sprints, and I did those same things out here. Totally different, right? My hands would be on the ground and it's not even ground. So that changes the environment. Putting a mask on your face changes the environment, and we did that for a while, right? Not on purpose, we changed that environment. So these things can change your training without really having to always increase the sets and reps and weight of an exercise. So we need to start looking from a more global standpoint of how to train and how to integrate training protocols than if we just use those three variables. There's 7 other variables. I talked about height yesterday or whenever that was, and I'm talking about environment today. So I put a mask on, that changes the environment. I wear a sweatsuit, that changes the environment. I go outside in 100-degree heat, that changes the environment. I go outside on the sand, that changes the environment. I jump on a trampoline, that changes the environment. All of these different things can change the protocol. We look and we dive into weight and repetitions because those numbers are easy to count and they're easy to calculate. But if you are not using some of these other essential tools, you're leaving holes in your training, right? You're leaving holes in your training. So think about that as you get into your programming, as you get into your workouts. Are you going from a global whole thinking standpoint, or are you just doing what we've done forever that is leaving some holes in your training?